I was washing spaghetti sauce off the ceiling when she told me she was done. Let that sink in. Not the sink, the sauce. Because while she was standing there with her designer coat half on and car keys in hand, dropping the nuclear bomb of "I'm done with this," I was on a chair with a sponge, scrubbing marinara off the ceiling fan. I'd overcooked dinner, the blender lid wasn't on properly, and I had just lost a fight with a meatball. And she didn't even laugh. She used to laugh. Now she just looked disgusted. Like I was a wet sock someone left in the sink. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, dripping in failure, holding a sponge, wondering how the hell this became my Tuesday. She shook her head. I can't keep pretending. Pretending what, exactly? That I wasn't bending over backwards every single day while she was out networking until 1 a.m.? That I didn't notice the hotel receipts, the new passwords on her laptop, or the smell of cologne that wasn't mine on her scarf. Okay, I finally said, climbing down from the chair. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, tossed the sponge into the sink, and added as calmly as I could, "Good. I'm free." She blinked. Like she wasn't expecting that. Like she thought I'd beg or cry, or at least grovel a little bit. I didn't. She left. Quietly. Almost confused. And that was the last I heard from her. Until a month later. See, what she didn't know is that I didn't just let her go. I erased her. Digitally. Financially. Emotionally. I moved out of our overpriced townhouse, sold my half of the furniture, started working remotely from a new address she didn't know existed. And I rebuilt something. Something she never thought I could. So when she showed up on my doorstep 30 days later, soaking wet from the rain, mascara halfway down her face, acting like I was still the fool who couldn't cook pasta without an explosion, I invited her in. I didn't say much. I just led her to the dining room. She froze. She saw who was sitting at my dinner table. And the look on her face? It was the only laughter I needed. She didn't even knock at first. I was in the kitchen sautéing garlic. Yes, me, the same guy who once set off the smoke alarm making toast. I had learned a few things in the past month. Not just about cooking, but about myself. About how much damage pretending can do when you convince yourself you're happy just because it's easier than facing the truth. The rain was coming down in heavy sheets, drumming against the windows like war drums. There was something poetic about it, the cleansing kind of storm you only see in movies, right before everything changes. Then the knock came. Sharp, hesitant, but insistent. I almost didn't answer it. Honestly, I thought it might be my landlord again, checking if I'd fixed the leaky bathroom tap. I hadn't. I never do anything when I'm asked to do it. It's a flaw, one of many. But when I opened the door and I saw her standing there, Valerie, it was like the air got sucked out of the hallway. She was drenched. Not from the rain. She had an umbrella, but from whatever hell she'd been walking through. Her hair was limp. Her mascara had bled into the soft creases beneath her eyes. Her voice caught before it came out. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, as if that explained everything. I didn't reply. I stepped aside and let her in, because some habits die hard, even after your heart has been burned to ash. She walked in slowly, like she was stepping onto thin ice. Everything about her was different, yet somehow painfully familiar. The way she glanced around my new living room. The way her eyes caught on the photos I'd deliberately placed in obvious view. Photos that didn't include her. It was all calculated on my part. I won't lie. I wanted her to notice how well I'd done without her. She took off her coat, hesitated near the dining room, and then froze. Her entire body locked up the second her eyes landed on the woman sitting at my dinner table. Now, let me be very clear. This wasn't some rebound fling. It wasn't revenge. And it definitely wasn't someone she expected. "Is that Claire?" Valerie's voice cracked like a dropped plate. Claire smiled gently. Not smug. Not cruel. Just calm. She was dressed modestly, like always, her hands folded on the table, her posture perfect, the very opposite of chaos. "Yes," I said, pouring myself a glass of water. "That's Claire." Her mouth opened to ask the next obvious question, but she already knew. That's the thing about cheaters. They think they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, but eventually, they realize they've been standing on the wrong board the entire time. "You invited her here?" she hissed. "After everything." "No," I interrupted, setting the glass down with a quiet thud. "Claire invited me to her table a long time ago. I just wasn't ready to sit down until now." Valerie looked like she'd been slapped. And then she did the one thing I didn't expect. She laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was hollow, bitter, the kind of laugh people do right before they cry. And I knew her too well not to recognize the shift. She wasn't angry because I moved on. She was angry because I moved on in a way she couldn't control. You think this is some kind of win for you? She spat, stepping closer. You think this is some perfect revenge moment where I walk in and you get to show me how happy you are? No, I said softly. I don't need revenge. I needed peace. And for the first time in months, I finally had it. What she said next would change the entire direction of what I thought was going to be just a dramatic doorstep moment. Because what she told me was something I never expected to hear from her lips. You're sleeping with her, Valerie said, her voice trembling, not with rage, but something else. I think it was fear. The kind of fear that creeps in when you realize the script you've been holding is no longer being followed. Claire didn't flinch. She just sat there quietly, the same way she used to sit through every uncomfortable family dinner we'd ever had. Calm, observant, absorbing everything and saying very little. But when she did speak, it always mattered. I turned to Valerie slowly, unsure if I wanted to feed into her chaos or just let her spiral on her own. But then she said it. The sentence that made my jaw tighten, my stomach flip, and my world shift just a little more. I think I made a mistake, she whispered. Not loud, not proud, just broken. It would have crushed me a month ago. That one sentence would have had me begging for clarity, rewinding every argument, looking for signs, for answers. But now, it just felt empty, like she'd thrown it out there as a lifeline, hoping I'd grab it like I always did. Claire stood up. I'll give you a minute, she said, brushing past Valerie with grace and confidence that, frankly, made Valerie shrink by comparison. That's when I realized Claire wasn't just someone I'd invited for shock value. She was someone who'd watched me fall apart quietly and never said, I told you so. Someone who'd seen Valerie for who she was long before I dared to. Once we were alone, the silence between me and my wife, my ex-wife, I guess, though it wasn't official yet, grew thick and suffocating. Valerie looked around the room, eyes flicking to the fresh flowers on the table, the clean plates, the soft music still playing in the background. All signs of a man who'd moved on, or at least was trying. She sat down slowly, like she couldn't quite believe she wasn't in control anymore. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. It wasn't supposed to go this far. That's when the dam inside me finally cracked. Wasn't supposed to go how far? You mean the lying? The sneaking around? The part where you made me feel like I was insane every time I asked a simple question? She winced. Not because I raised my voice. I didn't. But because the truth, when it's finally said out loud, always hits harder than expected. It wasn't serious, she mumbled. You brought him into our bed, Valerie. She looked away. Don't act like it was a fling. I continued, bitter now. You wore his cologne. You texted him at midnight while I was asleep 2 feet away. I washed your clothes and found his restaurant receipts. I thought you didn't know, she said, her voice barely audible. That right there, that was the nail in the coffin. She thought I didn't know. She thought I was just some harmless idiot, happily making dinners, folding her laundry, buying flowers for a woman who had already emotionally divorced me before she ever walked out that door. I knew, I said flatly. I always knew. I just didn't want to believe it. Her eyes watered. Maybe from guilt. Maybe from losing control. Maybe from realizing this wasn't going to end the way she hoped. Why her? She asked suddenly. Why Claire? I stared at her. You want the truth? I said. Because while you were deleting your messages and locking your phone, Claire was the one who called to check if I'd eaten. While you were disappearing for entire nights, she sat with me while I cried like a child on my kitchen floor. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't judge me. She just stayed. I leaned in, not out of spite, but finality. She stayed, Valerie. You left. There was nothing left to say after that. But Valerie wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't just lose you, she said slowly. You don't even know the whole story. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I already suspected there was more. And whatever she was about to say next, I had a feeling it would explain everything I couldn't figure out on my own. She wouldn't look at me. Valerie just sat there, shoulders slumped, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup like she was drawing circles around her guilt. I didn't push her. I didn't speak. I just waited. The same way I used to wait for her to come home at night, pretending I was fine, that I wasn't staring at the clock and wondering who she was laughing with. Finally, she broke the silence. I thought if I told you back then, you'd hate me forever, she said. I already do, I whispered. She flinched. Not dramatically, more like a small twitch in her jaw. But it was real. For once, my words hit her. She took a deep breath. I was pregnant. My stomach dropped. For 2 months, she added quickly. I found out after that weekend trip to Seattle, the one I told you was a company retreat. It wasn't. I just stared at her. Was it mine? I asked, but I already knew. She shook her head slowly. I lost it, she continued, her voice cracking. A few weeks later. I didn't tell him either. I told no one. Not even my sister. I just carried it and pretended nothing happened. I was frozen. Not with sadness, with rage. Not because I wanted to be a father, but because she never gave me the choice. Never gave me the truth. All those nights she cried in the shower and said it was work stress. That wasn't stress. That was shame. You lied to everyone, I said. I was scared, she said. I didn't love him. It wasn't supposed to go that far. But you and I, we weren't connecting anymore. You were just gone all the time. You mean working 2 jobs to keep us afloat? I shot back. You mean coming home to make dinner while you went out with clients? She covered her face with her hands. I know. But I didn't think she did know. Not really. Because if she had, she wouldn't be sitting in my new home now, trying to twist a confession into a redemption arc. Still, something inside me shifted. I wasn't prepared to hear about a child. Even a child that never made it into this world. Because that wasn't just betrayal. It was a whole life she kept from me. A version of reality I was never even offered. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. And behind us, in the kitchen, I knew Claire was still there, listening, but not interrupting. Respectful as always. Valerie stood up suddenly. I shouldn't have come here. She walked toward the door, but before she reached it, she turned and asked one last question. Do you love her? I didn't answer right away. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure which truth hurt more, the one she had just confessed, or the one I was about to say out loud. Yes, I finally said. I do. The moment the word left my mouth, Valerie's expression didn't crumble the way I thought it would. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there like she'd expected it. Like she came here already knowing the answer and just needed me to confirm it to make it real. But the silence that followed felt heavier than anything we'd said that night. She nodded slowly, then reached for the doorknob, but hesitated again. You know what hurts the most? She said quietly, her back still to me. It's not that you moved on. It's that you moved on with someone who always saw through me. I didn't know what to say to that. Because she wasn't wrong. Claire had never liked Valerie. She never pretended to, either. Not out of jealousy, not out of bitterness, just quiet awareness. Like she could see the cracks in our relationship before I even admitted they were there. Valerie turned back to face me one last time. I made mistakes. Terrible ones. But you weren't perfect either. Maybe not, I said. But I didn't destroy us. She didn't reply. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She placed it on the small table by the door, tapped it twice with her finger, and walked out into the rain. I didn't follow her. Not this time. When the door clicked shut, it felt final. No yelling. No begging. Just the quiet end of a war that had gone on too long. I stared at the paper on the table. It wasn't a letter. It was a receipt, dated 6 weeks before she left me. A hotel. One I didn't recognize. And under the printed address was a name I hadn't seen before. Not the guy I thought she'd been seeing. Someone else. I stood there, my chest tightening, trying to process what this meant. She hadn't just cheated. She'd lied about who she cheated with. Claire walked back in from the hallway. She must have heard the door close. Her face was calm, but cautious. Is she gone? She asked. I nodded slowly, still staring at the name on the receipt. What is it? She asked, stepping closer. I handed her the paper without a word. Her eyes scanned it, and immediately, her whole expression changed. Her lips parted. Her jaw clenched. Then she looked at me, not with pity, but with something like protective fury. I know that name, she said. My heart sank. And just like that, I realized the real story hadn't even started yet. Claire didn't speak right away. She just stared at the name like it was a memory she'd been trying to forget. I'd never seen her look like that before. So still, so shaken beneath the surface. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. And whatever she remembered, it wasn't good. Who is he? I asked. She hesitated. Damien Bell. The name sounded harmless enough. Generic. Like someone you'd mistake for a background character in a sitcom. But the way Claire said it, like the words burned her tongue, I knew he wasn't just anyone. You know him? I pressed. She nodded slowly. He used to work at my firm. Years ago. He was married then. Until he wasn't. I waited. Claire sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. Damien was charming. Everyone liked him. Always the first to offer help. Always knew exactly what to say. But it was an act. He slept with 3 women in our department before anyone realized what was happening. HR never got involved because no one wanted to talk. They were embarrassed. One of them lost her job because of him. My stomach turned. And now he's, what? With Valerie? Claire looked at me, something dark in her eyes. I don't think he's with anyone. That's the thing. He finds women who are vulnerable. Married women. Women with something to lose. He doesn't want a relationship. He wants destruction. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Valerie had already betrayed me. She had already torn us apart. But now I was learning she'd done it not just with someone else, but with someone dangerous. And worse, someone who targeted her. Still, part of me didn't want to believe it. Because believing it meant admitting she had fallen for a trap. That she wasn't just selfish, she was manipulated. And that complicated everything. I need to know how long it went on, I muttered. She said it wasn't serious. Claire tilted her head, eyes narrowed. She left a receipt, right? Did she know you'd find it? That stopped me. Because now that I thought about it, Valerie never left anything by accident. If that paper was in her pocket when she came over, then either she'd forgotten about it entirely, or she wanted me to see it. I pulled out my phone and searched the hotel address. A quick scroll through reviews. It wasn't in the city. It was over an hour away. A remote little boutique hotel in a quiet wine country town. Not the kind of place you go for a casual affair. Not unless you plan to disappear. Claire stood again, calmer now. More focused. I can make some calls. Quiet ones. I know people who still work near him. If he's still around, they'll know. I nodded, barely breathing. Thank you. But inside, I was spiraling. Because the closer I got to the truth, the more I realized Valerie hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She had entangled herself with a man who left women wrecked. And I had no idea what he still had on her. Or what else she hadn't told me. Claire made the call the next morning. I didn't ask who she called. I didn't need to. I could tell by the way she stepped into the other room and shut the door gently behind her that this wasn't the kind of conversation meant for my ears. She was protecting me, and maybe a part of me was still too fragile to hear it straight. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, the hotel receipt still lying beside it like a paper ghost. My coffee went cold. I didn't drink it. I couldn't. My thoughts kept circling one ugly question. Had Valerie ever really left him? Or was her little visit last night just a performance, a guilt dump to clean her conscience? When Claire finally came back in, she didn't sit down. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her face unreadable. He's still active, she said. Still in town. Still bouncing from one job to another. A few nonprofits, some PR work, a stint at a startup that mysteriously collapsed 2 months after he joined. He leaves damage wherever he goes. I swallowed hard. And Valerie? Claire hesitated. There's talk he's been seeing someone married. Again, the name wasn't shared, but the timeline matches. So do the locations. I felt like something inside me collapsed, not dramatically, not like a movie scene, but quietly, like a wall finally giving in after months of hidden rot. Because no matter how many lies Valerie told, no matter how many times I convinced myself she was just lost or scared or careless, this was different. This was deliberate. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands over my face. Claire didn't say, I told you so. She didn't offer a hug. She just stood there, letting me fall apart the way I needed to, privately, messily, with no judgment. After a long silence, I asked, do you think he has something on her? Claire finally sat across from me. I think he finds women like Valerie on purpose. Women who are drowning, but still pretending they're in control. And I think once he gets what he wants, he threatens to pull them under if they don't stay quiet. I shook my head slowly. She never even mentioned him. Because she knew once you knew his name, it was over. I looked at Claire, really looked at her. And it hit me. She wasn't just here because she cared. She was here because she'd seen this before. Maybe not with me, maybe not with Valerie, but with other women who made the same mistake. She knew how this played out. And she wanted to stop it before it ruined me any further. I need to see her again, I said. Claire blinked. Are you sure? No. But if she got in that deep, there's no way she walked out clean. And if she's scared, I need to know. I need to know everything she didn't tell me. I didn't say it aloud, but something in me whispered the truth. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about protecting whatever piece of myself I still had left before Damien Bell found a way to destroy that, too. I didn't call Valerie. I didn't need to. She showed up 3 days later. No warning, no text, just her knock at my door like some strange echo of the past. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened the door, looked her in the eyes, and waited for her to speak. She didn't cry. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, worn down, like someone who had finally run out of lies to tell. Can we talk? She asked. Claire wasn't home. She'd gone out for the afternoon after I told her I might be having a conversation I needed to finish alone. She didn't flinch at that. She trusted me. That alone was a feeling I still wasn't used to. Valerie stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the room like she didn't recognize it anymore. She didn't. Not because I'd redecorated, but because it was filled with something she'd never brought into my life. Peace. She sat down on the couch, same spot Claire usually took when she read in the evenings. And without me asking, she began. It wasn't just one affair, she said. It started with Damien, but there were others. Not relationships, just moments. Escapes. From myself, from us, from everything I didn't want to face. I said nothing. I wanted to hate you for moving on, but I couldn't. Because what I did, it was unforgivable. I hurt someone who loved me when he had every reason not to. I sat across from her, listening, not to punish her, not to dig up more pain, but because she needed to say it, and I needed to finally hear it without falling apart. I thought you'd hate me, she continued. But honestly, the fact that you didn't scream, that you didn't burn it all down, it made it worse. You let me walk away with silence. And that silence was louder than anything you could have said. I looked at her then, not with anger, but with calm. I didn't stay quiet to punish you, I said. I stayed quiet because I was done trying to convince someone to love me. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I believe you, I replied. And I did. But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And trust? That doesn't regenerate overnight. She stood up, slower this time. I just wanted you to know. That's all. I'm leaving town. Starting over somewhere else. I nodded. Take care of yourself. She smiled faintly. You already are. When the door closed behind her, it didn't hurt. It didn't sting. It didn't ache. It was just a door. And she was just someone I used to know. Someone who made terrible choices, but no longer had power over me. That night, Claire came home to the smell of something burning. I was trying to bake. Again. She laughed when she opened the oven and saw the disaster. I shrugged, embarrassed, but she kissed me anyway, flour on my cheek and all. You're still terrible at this, she said. Yeah, I smiled. But I'm better at everything else now. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next lie, the next betrayal, the next excuse. I was just living. Honest. Whole. Free.